then I won, and I got to come home. And to this day, my 26th season in this orchestra.
Wow.
To this day, I'm like, I can't believe I have a job in my hometown orchestra. So, well, I mean, in a parallel universe, I'm still in Buffalo, and I'm enjoying Buffalo and going to Niagara Falls, and you know, at the same time, Buffalo was better than Miami. It's it's only 6 hours away from home. So I still feel to this day grateful, lucky. I'm amazed that the luck. I wasn't lucky when I won. I was lucky that the job was open at a time where I was a contender. So, yeah.
Hey, what's up, Vox&Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. Hope you had a killer week. I most certainly did. This Vox&Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal, Montreal's premier metal promoter. And trust me when I say this to you, if you are ever in Montreal and you're looking for an amazing metal show to go to, well, I can guarantee you that Heavy Montreal will have you covered. I'm beyond stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be with Stéphane Lévesque of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox&Hops episode number 483.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm very stoked to be with Stéphane Lévesque. We are in a very, very cool place. I would have never imagined doing a Vox&Hops episode here, but thanks to you being a special individual, a special kind of metalhead, you play in the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, as we call it here in Montreal, the OSM. And I just watched you play an epic performance of Alpine.
Alpine Symphony.
Alpine Symphony.
Richard Strauss.
It was incredible. Over 100 people on stage, some people hiding in the wings. It was unbelievable. Blew my mind. It was beautiful. It was heavy. It was intense. It was moving. It was like a movie soundtrack before movies existed. A long intro just to say, how are you doing?
Really good. I'm really stoked that we get to meet face to face too, which I guess most of your interviews are not face to face anymore.
No, but I made a special. I do like doing face to face very, very, very much. It reminds me of the old days of the podcast. And we're actually not far to where my old haunt, as I think of it, where I used to go drag people to Saint-Buck to do interviews. We're in the backstage of the Maison Symphonique, which is a beautiful concert hall. Opened 12 years ago, you were mentioning. It's completely made for beautiful music, all made out of wood. It was incredible. What an experience. We're hanging out. Normally I buy the beer, but Stéphane, you're just surpassing all my other guests, all 400 and plus other. You got to take some notes from Stéphane. You brought me beer. It's Vox&Hops. What are we drinking? What are you drinking on your side?
I got a Ghost Farm IPA from Will's here in Montreal. I can't wait. I have to go to their tap room. I haven't been yet.
Oh, it's beautiful. So tiny, cute, eccentric, very good.
And I know you're a fan of Messorem, so what are you drinking?
I chose a Messorem. Thank you very much. I voted them with my beer media friends last year as the brewery of the year for Quebec for 2023. I was actually hanging out with a few of them this past weekend, and we were talking about what are we going to do this year. So hypothetically, they might win again. This is Clivage Anatomique. It's a 7% IPA with Phantasm. Phantasm is a very interesting beer adjunct. It is basically grape must that they throw in to the beer. It gives it a very sort of earthy, wild, juicy feeling. Phantasm was all the rage for a while. Sort of petered out because I heard it was really expensive to use in a beer. But Messorem, sometimes they still do it, I guess. So cheers to you for picking these up.
Cheers.
Juicy. The earthiness from the Phantasm. The other hops in this are Citra, classic. Mosaic T45, which I'm unaware of. Talus Cryo Talus. Delicious. What's in that Ghost Farm there?
Mosaic, Citra, and Simcoe.
There you go. Classic hops.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I would love to hear about your first beer. Let's kick it off with that. Do you remember going back and drinking that first beer? Probably not too many years ago.
More than you, but well, being a Quebec kid, the drinking age is 18, so by 15, 16,
you find a way.
People don't really frown upon it anymore, and so it was probably at a big family hang, probably on my mom's side in the summer. It was probably a Laurentide or a 50. It was cold, at least, because I knew you didn't want to drink it tablette, like the warm sort of been sitting around for too long. So, and I really liked the taste of beer. I didn't like coffee. My parents drank coffee. Not too much beer at home, but in the summertime. So maybe, 15, 16 years old. And then after that, your usual, high school parties where parents don't mind too much as long as nothing gets torn up or destroyed. Yeah.
Be cool parents. Be the chaperone parent, people.
Exactly. Yep.
Make sure the kids are safe. Reasonably safe.
Yep.
La Bête Psychout is the best of the worst. I say that pretty frequently on the podcast.
I would say, it's a little bit when people have debates over the other bad, or not bad, but the other kinds of beers like PBR or
Miller,
or God, there's one that's escaping my mind right now, but I'll come back to
Yuling. I just finished a tour in the States, so I have all these beers in my mind that the other bands are drinking, unlike me. What happened? At what point did you become a craft beer enthusiast? Is that something that you have? I know that you have because you send me pictures of beers every once in a while.
The first time I had a really good IPA was probably about 10 years ago, and then on a tour with the orchestra, we were in San Diego, and I was like, there's IPAs and then there's IPAs, and that was my entry into craft beers. And then more recently, we have so many great breweries here, it's outstanding. So going around checking out the Messorem stuff, and then sometimes also if I'm not drinking IPAs all the time because you saturate after a while, but then you start to look at their other stuff and it's so well done. So maybe in the last 10 years or so, and then when we're on tour, if you hear that there's a great brewery, a great tap room somewhere, you go. On my honeymoon in Hawaii, there's a great tap room, you go. So that becomes sort of your destination. You look for a decent coffee shop and a decent tap room.
It's the same on my tours, too. Coffee shop in the morning so I could use the toilet. True story. And then after loaded and sound check, we go to a bar and have a few beers. Sometimes there's good ones. I will give a shout out to Albany, New York. Phantasm was the best brewery that I visited on my previous tour in September with Carnifex. It was unbelievable. Top notch, up there with Messorem level. I'm not sure if they would argue that hypothetically Phantasm is better, but it was amazing. So I do have to give credit where credit's due, and I haven't mentioned on the podcast yet because I haven't recorded many interviews since I got back. Happy to be here. Let's talk about something that's interesting about you is that you're a metalhead, but you play classical music. Let's rewind even further. I want to hear about starting with the bassoon, because you play the bassoon. What is the bassoon? I just watched a whole piece with you playing the bassoon, and then I was like, I think that's him. And I'm like, oh, but the big double bass or the big cello is playing at the same time. The organ's playing. The trombone's playing. Let's talk about classical music and you falling into it.
I fell into it. My parents love music. They didn't love classical music that much. They wasn't playing too much in the house. But my dad's dad, my grandfather on my dad's side, was a huge classical music fan. And then in elementary school, I got to go to a public school that had a great music program, Le Plateau, in Parc La Fontaine. And so I played recorder, violin. I was horrible at the violin.
My daughter's just starting now. Yes.
Good luck.
I know.
And then
it hasn't come home yet.
a bit of piano, and that. If I have one regret is I didn't keep up the piano at all. I didn't have a piano at home growing up. Now we have one, and I look at it and I'm like, you look so cool, but I don't know what to do with you. And then I went into high school again with a music program, and so for the more exotic instruments like the bassoon. So the bassoon in the woodwind family the woodwinds are flute, clarinet, oboe, and bassoon. So the bassoon is kind of like the cello it's a lower register instrument, like in the bass line, but we can also play quite high. It has a great range. So these instruments, they would bring a student from the conservatory to demo them, and so this guy comes over and opens this case, and he starts to assemble the bassoon, because it's like 5 feet long, but you don't carry that on the subway, so it comes apart. And I loved the way it looked, and then he started to play, and I was like, that's it, I found my instrument. But they didn't really start you in grade 7 on those instruments, so plus I was...
Is it because they're too rare to keep them?
I think now at that school they do start them, but back then it was just a question of you wanted to get, the concept of playing a woodwind instrument with the easier ones, easier, sorry. I'm going to offend all my colleagues. Like the flute, the clarinet, saxophone.
To get down the basics of breathing.
Yeah, because to go from the recorder into now like a reed instrument, so it's a bit different. And then... So I played clarinet the first year, and at the end of grade 7, after our band concerts were done, then I went to the director and I said, so can I get a bassoon now? And he had forgotten about it.
What did you play that year?
Clarinet, yeah, just clarinet. Along with, 15, 20 kids, because when you've got a big like harmonia, a big wind band, mostly flutes, clarinets, and then trumpets, stuff like that. So I said, can I get a bassoon? And it went. So I got it. I got one lesson. I got a couple of reeds, because you play on these little reeds that are a phane / they're like a little craft, and you make them out of like bamboo, sort of. So I got a few of those, and then I went home for the summer. I came home. First of all, my dad, the pragmatic, logical man, goes like, why? The clarinet comes in a small case, and I wasn't very big. Why would you carry an instrument like that around? It's so heavy, it's so big. But then, to start the next year, there's still 15 clarinets, but there's one bassoon.
Interesting.
And then I, sort of got fast-tracked, because I was pretty good at it, to play in the symphony orchestra in high school. And when I got to like grade 10, when you start to think about going to college, cégep, I was like, I don't think there's anything else I want to do. This is it, And
was that a hard conversation with your parents?
No, they were very supportive. My mom likes to paint, and she had like a workshop and sort of a artists co-op, so she knew some freelance musicians, mostly I think pop and jazz people, who were very nice. They didn't paint a very romantic picture about, the
lifestyle of an artist.
Exactly, but
you're going to scrounge for money, hypothetically. Hypothetically meaning yes.
You will. And then I started the pre-college program at the conservatory here. So, that's when I stopped playing hockey, because
it was one or the other. You needed the time.
I didn't have time.
I stopped watching hockey when I started the podcast. That's a true story.
That makes sense. You have no time. It's crazy. So yeah, and then things, progressed. I finished my undergrad here, then I went to grad school in the States. Then I got into a music program, sort of a professional training program in Miami called the New World Symphony. Super competitive to get in, and I did 2 years there, and then I got my first job with the orchestra in Buffalo. So I was prepared to live away, I didn't want to be
It came with the territory.
Either, you choose, you want to be a freelancer, you want to be a private teacher or something like that. You stay home and you stay in touch.
That was your safety.
I could have done that, but I didn't want to. So my teacher said, well, are you okay with maybe not getting a job in your hometown? And then literally like the first 2 months I'm in Buffalo, and then there's an opening in the Montreal Symphony. So I have to come take an audition, and it's like the most... It's like a competition that happens in one day, and you go from prelims to semis to final, everything behind the screen.
So you personally are hidden behind a curtain,
yeah.
so that there's no bias.
The jury is, maybe well, depending what room you do it in. Ours, it was in a really crappy rehearsal room down at the Place des Arts, but I knew the room, so it was okay. And then I won, and I got to come home. And to this day, it's my 26th season in this orchestra.
Wow.
To this day, I'm like, I can't believe I have a job in my hometown orchestra. So
Because it could have not happened.
Well, I mean, in a parallel universe, I'm still in Buffalo, and I'm enjoying Buffalo and going to Niagara Falls, and you know, at the same time, Buffalo was better than Miami. It's it's only 6 hours away from home. So I still feel to this day grateful, lucky. I'm amazed that the luck. I wasn't lucky when I won. I was lucky that the job was open at a time where I was a contender. So
you were at that peak performance level.
I was in a good place.
Good for you. Yeah, that's so cool. 26 years. Well, cheers to 26 years.
Yeah, man.
I was definitely going to ask that. Back to metal. Do you remember discovering metal?
Yes, indeed.
What was that story? Where did you find metal? Montreal is an amazing city to be a metalhead. It always has been. What's your story?
Iron Maiden. It, for so many of us.
They were just here. Did you go?
I couldn't go because I had a concert. That's how you and I got in touch, because I was following your feed on Instagram. And then you maybe remember me not, but you had a show in Montreal, and I texted you saying, "Oh, I can't go because I got a concert of my own." Then I took a screenshot of my concert with the Montreal Symphony. You're like, "What?" So that's how we got acquainted. But I think it was a friend of mine who had a T-shirt. I was like, "What is that?" And probably I was 11 or 12, and so I got to hear the Power Slave album. And then I got the year after Live After Death came out, a Power Slave tour. And to this day, I've owned it in pretty much every format you could. And then from there, Metallica was big at that time, talking late 80s. And, when you get the early albums, the really thrash albums like Ride the Lightning, then you're like, whoa, this is faster. This is something I could get behind. And so then I explored a little bit. I liked a lot. I mean, I loved a lot of classical music. I loved a lot of maybe more sort of alternative or punk music. But I always went back to Maiden. Always went back to Metallica. And then a little bit later in life, I discovered, went down one more level and went, Slayer. That's another gateway drug. When you discover Slayer, you're like, oh, wait a second. So, and then you experiment. You go to the record store. There are a few, you go to listening station at HMV.
Back in the day, people listening.
There
was listening stations at
in the record stores. Yeah, and then
you would discover stuff there.
A cover looks great. You're like, wow, what is this?
That's all because of good employees. Yeah, I wonder if record labels used to pay to put their things in those things. I would imagine so. Yes,
probably. So and it's with all the other. I listen to a lot of Québécois French music, a lot of French music. I certainly still listen actually, but I had a big Public Image Limited period. And then one day I saw Michel Aué-Langevin, a photo of him from Voivod wearing a PIL shirt. I was like, whoa. But,
my worlds are colliding.
And then I think and I also have a couple of colleagues in the orchestra with whom I've gone to shows.
Really?
Yeah. I can't remember the first time the only time I think I saw you guys was on a Lamb of God tour. You guys were opening
right down the street.
At Talus, or Metropolis it used to be called. And I think so. When it comes to extreme metal, it's more recent. I think that was maybe 2016. I think
that makes sense.
Tour. And I mean, I knew of it. I knew of
the name because we were from here.
Yeah, no, and of that genre, and I know a lot of extreme metal musicians get through Cannibal Corpse or Gorguts or whatever, and I had listened a little bit to it and I didn't really get it. And then I saw your show and I was like, oh, hold on a second. This, like, musically, this is just as demanding, probably more demanding than what I played tonight. Technically, for you guys to be up there for an hour and, or maybe not for an opening up, but, I still...
We had to negotiate to do 35 minutes because we did None So Vile in its entirety.
Okay.
So we started 5 minutes early is what we did that night.
It worked great. But and then I got really fascinated with the vocal aspect of it because, a lot of my classical music friends who are into metal, into, rock and metal, like we went to the last Heavy Montreal 2019, picked the day that Slayer was there, their supposed last concert.
I was there.
You were there?
I was backstage doing a lot of these interviews. I didn't see many bands, but I did see Slayer.
Yeah. And then there's another band, and I think we texted about it too at some point, but in 95, I was doing a road trip, and I stopped in Omaha, Nebraska, and went to an indie record store and saw this album, the Clutch album, the one with the logo on the surface of the moon. I was like, what is this? So I started listening to it, and then at some point my girlfriend goes, where are you? It's like she was going around the store, and I just listened to the whole album there. And they were playing on the same day at Heavy Montreal in 2019 as Slayer. Great Sabatini.
Oh, I love the Great Sabatini.
Oh, I just saw them maybe 6 months ago at Turbo House.
Really?
Oh, so good.
I should have gone.
And now, with the kids, with the job, I miss shows because I have a concert. I missed Cryptopsy a year and a half ago in Montreal. I missed you guys on the Carnifex tour. I was working or taking care of babies. So, but it's really the metal has remained a constant. I don't listen to a lot of French music anymore. I don't listen to a lot of alternative music anymore. And I don't have that much time, and I can't scare the kids too much at home. So,
yes, you can.
Well, I will. I mean,
you've sent me videos of them listening to stuff.
They're listening a little bit. One of the twins, they're 18 months, and when I go like Slayer, you go like, let's try to imitate. So
I have this video of my daughter. I'd love to find it.
Yep.
It's like how iPhones put everything in the cloud, and it makes it super annoying to look back at your pictures. Mm-hmm. It was Cannibal Corpse, Scourge of Iron, and I put it on, and I must have lip synced with George because we just finished a tour with them right before she was born, and then I hung out with her. I stayed home with her for a year when she was 18 months, so I'd put this on, and I guess would lip sync, and she started to do it too. It was amazing. I have to find this video. It's unbelievably funny.
Yeah, I also have a 17-year-old, almost 18-year-old son. And when he was a kid, he had a small drum kit, and I'd play the cool. Trooper.
Yeah.
And it would he would just get it. He would get it.
The musician genes.
Yeah, no, definitely. So.
Has he bought into the metal?
The 17-year-old? Yeah. No. He finds it interesting. He'll let me play it when we're going on a road trip or something. I'll play it. We kind of tap out like at Lamb of God, because after that I think he's just like, I don't get it, and I'm like, I know, and I'm not going to push it,
No, because he's going to push back and rebel.
Exactly.
That's what I don't want to do with my kids. Yeah. Me and Chris from Crypt Shops, we keep talking about that.
Yeah.
It's like what we can't push them too much because they're going to rebel and go 180 in the opposite direction, and then we'll be screwed.
Yep. No. You want them to appreciate what you do as an art form. It's still art. It's still incredible musicianship, and that's I think what strikes me with so many of the extreme bands. It's like if I, a trained classical musician, can't pick out the time signatures, and you guys are doing this from memory every night, it boggles my mind. So it's very cool.
That's cool, but that's definitely not me, because I spend my time not understanding what's happening most of the time too. And I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Chris and Flo and Ollie knows what's happening, but there's times that Chris will count things one way and Flo will count it a different way, which is something that's interesting too, as long as everyone understands and meets up at the end.
Exactly. Where there's a couple of meeting points, bar lines that. If your 7 was 3 + 4 and his was 4 + 3, but it's still 7.
Correct.
That's awesome.
When you're growing up, you discover metal. You're still playing the bassoon. people in your class must have been starting bands because that's what people do. Young people do. That's what I did. How did you fit in there?
I went. Sometimes some friends would have a band.
They didn't try to incorporate the bassoon?
No. It can be done, but very few people do it well. There's a guy, Paul Hansen, plays with Bella Fleck. Yeah. And he does, then on his own, he does a lot of electric bassoon, amplified, modulated, like all sorts of crazy effects. And he's also technically amazing. So what he does, again, is something that I can only appreciate. I'm not going to start to plug my bassoon into machines and pedals and things. So no, I didn't really like, the most I got into like playing something that wasn't a bassoon. It's my last year during my undergrad at the conservatory here. I kind of got permission from the percussion guys. If I went in before 8:30 in the morning, I could go play drums. So I put on the headphones and play probably Maiden, and just really horribly, but just play along, and it was a good way to start the day, to get some, the last year of your degree, you've got to do a big like recital and things like that, and it was quite stressful. So, maybe I did that a couple times a month, but I never didn't do, there are branches of contemporary music where people do a lot of improv. I have enough on my plate with the job in the symphony and teaching at university.
You also teach at university?
Yeah,
okay.
I teach bassoon at McGill University.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I mean, I'm lucky. My job in the orchestra meant that I got a call from McGill going, Nick, so do you want to come and teach? So,
because you're first chair bassoon.
Yeah. And
how does that work? Let's explain for people, because I don't even know the answer to this. I know there's first chair violin, and they're the rock star of typically.
Our concertmaster's a rock star. Yeah. Then every section has a leader.
Exactly.
And so, you're called principal. So I'm the principal bassoon. Then there's an associate principal bassoon who will play first also.
And they turn your pages.
No. They play first, so that on certain concerts I've got the luxury of not playing the first half.
Oh,
so
okay.
Today the concert had an overture and a concerto in the first half. That was my colleague who got to play that.
Okay. And
then unfortunately for him, on the Alpine Symphony, there are 4 bassoons, so he was here all night. He's probably more tired than I am. But yeah, so, depending on the section, there's always a principal and then an associate principal, and then we have the second player, and then we have the people that play the other instruments. Like for flute, you got someone who plays flute and piccolo.
Okay.
Clarinet,
so they're flopping around
clarinet.
instruments.
Yeah, exactly. So, but for me, there's 4 of us in the orchestra, four bassoons. So, yeah.
Metal, I've always said this, I've thought this forever. Metal, classical music, so similar. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Where does that come from? How does it translate?
I'm going to let the historians give a better version. I'm sure you go on YouTube and find great descriptions. But if you think to the 1800s, there's a violinist and composer, Paganini. Most people have heard the name Paganini. And he was a great performer and a great composer. And he wrote, fiendishly difficult music for his instrument, and then you compare that to the great guitarists like Eddie Van Halen or whatever, like, and when you listen a lot of the stuff that they do, or listen to Maiden, and then when like the 2 or 3 guitarists decide to go in parallel intervals, they're playing the same music but up and down the third. We do this all the time in classical music. Mm-hmm. So there's and then depending, if you listen to, some more sort of standard rock and roll in 4/4 time, or in, in cut time, or in sort of triple time, like in 6/8 or whatever, then you go to the Baroque era, the classical era, all the way until now. You've got composers doing the same thing. And then you've got, a lot of the virtuosic aspect to me.
Is it just people like pushing the limits of what's physically possible and what falls within the rules of musicality?
When you're looking at the structure of a piece or of a song for you guys, and how it's layered, and and then you just look. for me, the first time I heard Cryptopsy, I was like, what is that drummer doing?
Yeah.
And I think I'm mostly drawn to the drums and I'm drawn to the vocals. So, and that's why I've, kept going on with the sort of more death aspect of metal. And, but I think there's a kind of, complexity and virtuosity that you can find in a lot of music. You guys not doing 3-chord songs.
No.
And sometimes we do, but usually we don't either. And then there are some people that are drawn in the classical music world. If they want complexity outside of classical, then they'll go to jazz. Mm-hmm. Some people who play in the symphony orchestra, and then they really like opera. We don't play operas that much. We do maybe one a year here, but and then you get your fix from that. So
yes,
yeah,
yes. You play a lot more than we do, meaning different material all the time. How challenging is that to constantly be learning something? You guys do have your sheets up there, but it doesn't mean you don't have to practice and learn it beforehand.
So my job, we call it services. It's rehearsals or concerts. And typically I've got 8 of them, and that's 20 hours on stage.
Wow, okay.
And then probably another, depending on the week, on the rep we're playing, if it's something that I've never played, or if it's something I've played but it's really difficult, there's probably another 15, 20, sometimes more hours. I mean, I'm old now, so I've been doing this a long time, but the goal is you get to the first rehearsal, and it is already a performance that can be tweaked, that can be adjusted.
But you show up prepared.
Oh, you have. You have to, especially at this, in an
this
orchestra
level.
This level.
You want to be taken seriously, people. You show up to band practice knowing your parts.
I mean, you don't want to waste.
I'm speaking to my own band members too.
You don't want to waste your or other people's time.
I agree. Yeah.
And like this week is particularly challenging because I don't know when this is going to air, but in just a few days, the program that you heard tonight
is going to be on tour in Europe.
We're taking it on tour to Europe
and the UK.
Yeah. And some weeks, like I said, like if Beethoven's Fifth Symphony shows up, I know it from memory. I still have the music, but I have the. I've been playing it a long, long time.
Muscle memory pops up.
Yeah, and we play it a lot because that's a good way to sell tickets because people still want to hear it. So, but then sometimes
that's why I play Slit Your Guts.
Yeah. There you go. No choice. People want to hear it. But then like something like the Alpine Symphony that we played tonight. It's very demanding. So you need to come in to your first rehearsal and where the traps, where like you don't play in that rest right there. If no one else is playing, you don't want to be the one coming in. If everybody's playing soft and you like start playing loud, people go like, "What are you doing? Look at your." Oh yeah, right. It's marked to play softly. So, it's really a big part of the job is, coming in prepared so that then if there are things, if people around you do something a little bit different, you hear it, you can adjust, you can react. We have to adjust for pitch all the time. We have to adjust for dynamics all the time.
That's so interesting. You guys are like a living organism just bouncing off each other.
It's crazy. Even though there's a conductor up there, and
his name reminded me of
Raphael Payet, the music director of the Montreal Symphony. We're looking at him for a certain amount of guidance and energy, but if someone decides to play a little softer or take a little more time or play a little shorter or whatever, I'm not going to be the jerk who goes like, no, it should be this way. I go like, no, actually that makes sense. And you adjust. And in the rehearsals, you try and do most of it so that when you get to the concert, and
so different from death metal, which is just regimented and
but
on the click.
It's on the click. And but that is also a side of classical music that you can see. I mean, click tracks are important for things like soundtrack recording, studio recording, things like that. We've done a few things with clicks here too. So yeah,
it's so cool. I want to talk about the similarities, differences between us as musicians doing this. We're backstage right now. You just finished your show. There's nobody here. That's the first big difference. No party after the show.
No, I'm sure that a lot of people went. So there, especially for this piece, there are a lot of extra musicians, a lot of students also. So I'm sure these people
to fill up,
especially the offstage. We had maybe 15 offstage musicians.
Where do they go, and how is that mic'd? Is it mic'd?
No, it's not mic'd. It's all like then. During the rehearsal today, we did a few tests: door open, door half shut, door shut, and the best sound was with the door shut. But then it was too soft, so then they're like, okay, there's
that's interesting.
Angled things a bit differently, but no, and this is also a Wednesday night. We have a rehearsal tomorrow morning. We have another concert tomorrow night, and then after tomorrow night, we get ready for the tour. I think on tour. It'll be a little bit different. You have to be careful, but it'll be.
You got to take care of yourself. You're flying,
and we're flying.
You got to take care of yourself. You got to behave yourselves.
And when you go in, same thing for you guys. When you go and play places that have seen a lot of bands, or for us, a lot of orchestras come in, you don't want to catch the Montreal Symphony on an off night, and.
Are there off nights, really?
No, never. Of course,
we don't have any either.
there might be some, or more. It's more personal. It's like you could have done something differently. Yeah. You could have done something a little bit better, or something you took for granted. Like it's been going great, and then you don't pay attention, and whoops, there's like a lick or an interval that doesn't speak the way you want to, and you're like, oh man. Yeah. So then the next night you pay extra attention, and it's better than it was the first time. You're like, okay.
That's good. You can't let it get into your head, though, because then it...
No. I mean, especially on tour, when you play a show, go to bed. Next day, if you're lucky, you travel only like at 10 or 11. Yes. And it's not too far. If you're
not a 4 a.m. lobby call.
We don't do those. But yeah, no, it's really... There's a big social aspect to classical music, classical musicians. On tour also, we meet up with a lot of people we know in other orchestras. You're like, hey,
they come out.
Yeah, they come out. They come to see us, or they don't come to the concert because they're like, oh, you guys are playing this again. So then, but instead we're like, oh, what
we'll
hotel?
Meet at a bar.
Exactly. What hotel you at? But and tonight, I mean, it's epic. This piece is epic. It's so many people,
huge.
So many people on stage, and
the giant guy up in the organ,
the organ right there, yeah.
So up, way up.
He's gonna have a fun time because every time we go to, it's a different instrument. It's gonna be
exactly. Yeah, because you can't bring that with you.
Actually, no, it's a little too big. But no, we're playing that piece twice, I think in Paris and Vienna, so we know there's a good organ there. So
you don't necessarily get to choose the pieces that you get to play.
No.
How is that? Is it an excitement when something pops up? I know there is something very exciting that's coming up, the Voivod collab, but not all of these are something that's going to pique your interest as much as other pieces.
That's called professionalism.
I was going to say, how do you motivate yourself to get excited with something that Beethoven fifth again?
Yeah. That's the job, and some people like some composers better than others. Some people like different genres within the symphonic rep. I think people are coming to hear this. They're coming to hear us. They're coming to hear, a top level ensemble. So I have to put my feelings aside a little bit, and then I try to look for different challenges. Like, wow, I never thought that this piece, which I don't particularly appreciate, had this level of difficulty, or I'm gonna just try to make a nicer sound or things like that. And what we do usually when the season is announced, we can't wait to get the brochure.
Do you find out beforehand?
No. We find out at the same time. A few people, there are a chosen few. If you're on the union rep, the players committee, you might be consulted about a few things. But no, the actual season launch.
It takes us weeks to hash out a set list.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing this usually 2 seasons ahead.
I would imagine.
So to book conductors, guest solo artists, and everything. So yeah, then we get it, and then we, when I saw that we were playing this piece, which on an old version of the Montreal Symphony website, I listed this piece, the Alpine Symphony, as one of my favorite pieces. So
awesome.
When I saw we were doing it, and then when I was told we're taking it on tour, I was like, yes. And then, it really, you have to find a way to play at the level that some of your colleagues who just love this piece, you're like, I don't like it. And they go like, dude, this is great. So I'm not going to make it bad for them.
The wind machine. For people that don't know what it is, it's this giant wheel, basically, that's wrapped.
And I think it's
in
leather. It's like it's a crank.
Yeah.
Literally, it's a crank
with like 4 holes in the wheel, and when you crank it, it sounds like wind.
That machine has existed for a long time because Richard Strauss in the late 1800s wrote a part for a wind machine. People were creative back then.
Is that flying with you? Is where I was heading with this?
I think so. Yeah. I think
that's so
it's
cool.
part of the percussion
cargo,
gear.
yeah.
The cargo. We're not taking as many 53 foot vans as Maiden might, but it's there's a lot of cargo going on this.
I can imagine. Yeah. Very impressive. There was a beer that was made for OSM, made by my good friend Gab at Le Relais Boreal here in Montreal. Talk to me about that. What was that beer? Where did that come from? Who set that up? What idea was that? And how was it?
I got a colleague, Sylvain, shout out to Sylvain in the cello section, who's friends with the people at Boreal. And at some point, I guess they're like, why don't we do an OSM, Boreal OSM collab? And so then I was supposed to be on there, but babies. So I've got 18-month-old kids, so I couldn't exactly leave at 5:00 to go and do a sampling. But so I think maybe a half dozen musicians got together with the brewmasters over there, and as much as I was looking for something crazy like a
double
IPA,
they made a lager.
They made a Pils, actually. It was a nice summer Pils, very classy, very drinkable, and I guess there's a bit of a partnership going on. I don't know if they'll make another one.
I hope they should. Was it available here?
It was available I think in very few stores. It was available at the concert hall, at concerts.
That's cool, then.
Yeah, and so I think I got a couple of 6-packs back in the summer. But yeah, it was, it's really fun to, of course, what we do is play concerts. And, we have a few Pops concerts in the year. We have a few kids concerts in the year. But, our bread and butter is symphony concerts. So then when we can associate with, a brand that everybody in Montreal recognizes, it makes sense. So I wish I could have been part of it, and I would have pushed for at least an IPA. But I can understand why, in terms of more
the clientele
exactly
here, hypothetically would rather drink a Pils,
maybe
rather than a big double IPA, juicy double IPA. Everyone's just sloshed at the Maison Saint
intermission. Go get 2 IPAs and fall asleep in the second part of the concert.
Bands have collaborated with orchestras. For some reason, the main one that comes into my head is the Metallica symphony record that came out in the 90s. Voivod is coming up. Let's talk more about that. I think it's super exciting. Voivod is the pinnacle Quebec extreme metal band. Talk to me about the excitement about this, about playing Voivod music, and your hypothetical apprehensions maybe about this project.
I have no apprehensions, but a few of my colleagues, they found out that I was partly responsible for this. So what gives? So when the Metallica thing came out, when it was announced, 1999 was when it happened. I actually got in touch with the principal bassoon there, my friend Steve Paulson, and I was like, hey, I'm a big metal fan, and if you don't really want to do the gig,
I'm in.
I'd love to come in.
I'll cover my flights.
Exactly. And he said, normally I'd probably take you up on that, but it was all extra work outside of the regular symphony season. They got paid, I don't even know how much, but because back in the day, CD, DVD, documentary, all these rights. So it was too lucrative to not do it. And then they did it again in 2019. And other orchestras or other bands, rock and maybe some metal. I'm not.
Dimmu Borgir has done it as well at Wacken.
Okay,
it was super cool.
Yeah. So I mentioned it in in 1999, and they were like, "What are you talking about? Get out of here!" I'm like, "No, Montreal. big metal town. I'm
Now
sure
with the cap, where we were declared a metal town.
And so then a few years ago, there was an article about Michel Away Langevin, the drummer for Voivod.
Back to the pill. Back to the pill shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And the article was equal parts about, I think, the music and also the art.
Because he draws.
He's the
illustrator.
The imagery of Voivod is all him.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I sort of innocently forwarded to my friend Marie-Claude, who works she does a lot of the production stuff here, and she's in charge of the Pops shows. And we've done Pops concerts with a lot of different artists, Cowboy Fringant. We've done a lot of French Canadian singers. We've done Half Moon Run. We've done Simple Plan back in the day. That was a fundraiser, I think. And I said, okay, maybe now's the time, and Voivod, they're regarded as a very sort of technical, sort of and they, I mean their music. There's everything in their music depending on the era you're listening to. And then so I sent the article to Marie-Claude, and then she was interested. She was curious about it. And then she realized that Michel's, I think, cousin is married to a very famous Québécois artist, Diane Dufresne, like one of our most famous divas. Like
I just saw her. I just saw her, Dr. Jean Drapeau, on the Eclipse Day.
So then when there's a connection like this, and then people start to put two and two together, then things can actually happen. And as it turns out, when they were approached, when Voivod was approached, they were super psyched to do this. They think of their music oftentimes in again, motion pictures, soundtrack, science fiction, telling stories, things like that, which is what we do in classical music too. Well, we do in all music, but sometimes it's more obvious than other times. And so that was, I think, in 22 or 22 that the ball slowly started rolling, and then it was confirmed, and then they got a symphony, he's a trombone player, like a arranger who's going to do the tracks, so that we're not just background sort of filling in the sort of scenery, but I think it's going to be very,
part of the music.
It's going to be very interactive. And then I just happened to do a bit of PR with Danielle and Michel, and they're super excited. I'm super excited. And it's one of these one of a kind events. It's
one show.
Well, we're doing it twice, but yes, it's just like we're not going on tour. It's not going to be a recurring thing. But to have probably 70, 80 musicians on stage and Voivod up there, and to see what kind of energy we can bounce off of each other, it'll be really cool. And these guys are, again, like such great musicians. Take away the label, they're just great musicians. They're just really inspiring to me. So I'm psyched. End of January, I can't remember the date exactly, but January 2025 at Place des Arts in Montreal. Come on.
I'm excited. I definitely want to be there. I feel like I'm home at that time, so I will definitely try to be there. If people want to hear the bassoon in all its beautiful glory, what should they listen to discover what the true sound of a bassoon is?
I think an easy way is the original Disney Fantasia movie.
Okay.
Because in Fantasia, you have everybody, I think most people have seen The Sorcerer's Apprentice, where like Mickey, like the master goes away, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to get the broom to do my work, and then the brooms go haywire. Well, the main theme of that is the bassoons.
Okay.
That's the more sort of like comical side of it. But also in the same movie, which actually we're doing it this year. We're doing the movie. We're playing the soundtrack with the movie.
Really?
Fantasia, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
OSM.ca, because I can't remember the date.
You go we go week by week.
Oh my God. what's next week? But yeah, at the same time,
you're going on tour. But.
Exactly. you're hearing the bassoon in that sort of kind of gruff tenor bass register, but then we can also play in the higher register, and so there's the whole thing about like. I can't really remember. It's been too long, but there's a whole part about the creation of the world and dinosaurs and things like that, and they play The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky,
yes,
which starts with an epically difficult bassoon solo, which I had to play to get into the Montreal Symphony. So that's more like the plaintive, sort of mournful, distant high register type of stuff. And then if you want to hear what we can do in the low register, you can go listen to Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony. The whole opening is just double basses, and then the bassoon plays a very dark, sort of mysterious melody, but in a very low register. And it's so that's sort of the three of the many characters I can portray with my instrument. But yeah, so Fantasia, Sorcerer's Apprentice, and Rite of Spring, and then Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony.
I like how you use your instrument to portray things.
We're lucky because it's not just one color or one register, and sometimes if I'm playing in a Mozart or a Beethoven symphony, I'm playing very much with the cellos, with the basses. But then if I'm playing a Mozart opera, I might be echoing the soprano. The singer will sing something, and then the answer will come from the bassoon. Mozart was very in favor of the bassoon, so that's cool. Yeah.
I have one last question. I hope that it doesn't happen to you coming up on your tour, but every once in a while it happens to everyone. Maybe one of your friends is going to pop up in the city, and he's going to come to the show. They're going to come to the show. You're going to hang out at a bar afterwards, and you're not going to have a 4 a.m. lobby call because you guys don't do that. But every once in a while it happens to everyone. What is your hangover cure?
If I am aware that it might go that way, I'll make sure that the Advil is out. A lot of water, a couple Advil before going to bed. When you wake up, a lot of water, a couple more Advil, and then go get a greasy breakfast. Yeah, I mean, you try not to do it too much on tour, but my wife could tell you stories, maybe. My wife is a cellist in the orchestra also.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
But it may have happened in Krakow with one of our friends who's a stagehand, and he used to tour with rock bands, and I will never, ever follow him down the rabbit hole again.
No.
So
never.
But yeah, Advil and water, and then before bed, and when you wake up, and then hopefully a good, decent, greasy breakfast.
Hell yes. Stefan, thank you so much for hanging out with me, talking about life, talking about bassoon, classical music, beer. This is an honor and a pleasure. I had a beautiful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been really, 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 really great to be on this. And now I'm tired. Got to go to bed.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an incredible experience. Never in my life did I think that starting a metal and beer podcast would bring me backstage at Place des Arts at this beautiful, beautiful room, La Maison Symphonique it's called. It's this beautiful venue, just all made out of wood. It's just incredibly beautiful. So excited to have connected with Stefan, and I hope to hang out with him a lot more. I am going to the Voivod OSM collab, and I think you should too. I have put the link so that you can grab some tickets in the description of this podcast. Come and support this very unique project. Show Montrealers and show the classical music world that metalheads do appreciate classical music, and all of the classical music enthusiasts out there, you guys are in for a treat because Voivod is just simply incredible. Massive cheers to Stefan for being awesome. I cannot wait to hang out with you again.
The Vox&Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer rest of the week. I will be back next week with another episode on Thursday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox&Hops heads.